I was gonna buy an Infinity Gauntlet prop for this video, but I don't want half of my wallet to turn into dust, so instead, the part of the Infinity Gauntlet shall instead be played by this Donkey Kong puppet that I bought at PAX East. I call it the Infinity Konglet.
Okay.
So Thanos' brand spanking new documentary about how he killed half the universe came out in theaters a couple of weeks ago. And much like half the universe, I too am hopelessly invested in these fucking stupid movies. We are 20 plus movies in. I mean, this ship should have sailed a while ago, but when the worst it gets out of this many movies is this. When this is the worst it gets, when the worst it gets is just that's pretty good. That's a bloody miracle. This time around, I thought, in honor of Avengers Endgame, this is the perfect excuse for me to blab on about some Marvel video games for a little bit. And Spider-Man will definitely not be half of the list. Scout's honor. So, it's never a good sign when the very first segment of your top 10 video begins with you saying, I never played this game. But here we are! Make sure to stay tuned for the sequel, I never played this game, but it sucks and here's why you're wrong. Until then, hey, I never played any of the LEGO Marvel games. Or most LEGO games in general. I played most of the early Star Wars ones and went, that was alright I guess. But I'm definitely not in any rush to play any of the other ones. I was apparently the only one with this thought, because now there are more licensed LEGO games than there are years I probably have left to live. I'm sure the LEGO games are all the same mentality isn't accurate, but the sheer number of these things doesn't leave me any confidence in singling out anyone in particular. But I still have a soft spot for LEGOs, even if I stopped playing with them a very long time ago. And I fucking cried once during the LEGO movie, so now that you know my deepest, darkest secret, I figured I ought to at least humor these games as potential nominees. So, the following opinion comes from somebody with limited experience playing LEGO games and only watched footage for about 2 hours for research purposes. Yeah, they're okay. If there's one thing the LEGO brand excels in, it's encouraging imagination, which definitely translates comfortably over to Marvel. And honestly, these games are impressive just based on the number of characters you could play as alone. Obviously, with 150 plus characters, you're gonna see a lot of overlapping movesets, but for a kid's attention span, their playstyles are varied just enough to get away with, and to me, it's worth it if it means we get an underdog cast with the likes of Squirrel Girl, Moon Knight, Fing Fang fucking Foom, who I forgot existed until I looked these games up, and then I forgot existed again until I went to write this script. Now, of course, that said, Big Wheel is not playable, which is just a travesty. Now listen, I'm on board for now, but if you make a fourth one of these things, and Big Boy Wheeler ain't on it, you can forget about having any more of the money that I haven't given you to begin with. Alright, hey, listen, let's go ahead and move on to the next segment before I step on a Lego or something. Oh, fuck. God. X-Men Origins Wolverine came out right around the time licensed movie games were starting to fizzle out, or at least there's nowhere near as many nowadays as there were back then. And against all odds, the X-Men Origins game, the Xbox 360 version specifically, is way better than the Origins movie, by a humongous margin. Even though the movie was rated PG-13, the game was surprisingly rated M to better highlight Wolverine's violent tendencies, and apropos of that, this is probably the best playable incarnation of Wolverine in any video game he's ever been the star of. They even included some of Wolverine's more underappreciated abilities, like his animal-like senses. The developers really tried to create an authentic Wolverine experience, even though they're still obligated to follow the movie, which, indeed, holds the game back. And even when they do get a chance to break away from the film plot for a second, it ain't much better. Seriously, take a shot every time you return to this random African jungle that doesn't tie back into the main narrative at all. If this game was a unique Wolverine adventure with the same gameplay and approximately 20 less jungle levels, it could be bumped up like 2 spots easily. As it is, it's by no means an amazing game, but you can easily tell the developers really tried to make the most out of the many restrictions they were no doubt placed under, and I do think it shows. Much like almost all Activision Marvel games, this game's been delisted from official online stores, and I would not recommend going out of your way to play this, but if you can, it's not a bad 8 hours. On any other list of best Marvel games, Marvel Ultimate Alliance would probably be way higher than this, and probably deserves to be, but personally, I'm not big on action dungeon crawling, role-playing type games, and it ain't like I haven't tried. I also played Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance once, a Dungeons and Dragons game, critically acclaimed. I got bored 2 hours in and stopped. This game? Well, I made it 3 hours this time. That said, I can very easily see why people like it so much. There is this weird addictive quality to it, even though that's coming from someone who knew when to quit. Much like the LEGO Marvel games, Marvel Ultimate Alliance's main priority is cramming as many characters into the dang game as possible. Fing Fang Foom is back! And still no Big Wheel, but I mean, you know, bless their hearts, they tried. That said, that does come at a cost to the narrative. You can get away with no character development in a game where pure aesthetics are doing most of the work for you, and while there are some pretty cool cutscenes, there's also the ones where characters awkwardly stand around and talk, and they barely emote, but they're definitely in the same room with each other, and they're talking to each other, and they're having a conversation. They are using their mouths. I'm so invested. But what the game lacks in unique movement animations and stuff like that, it does make up for by encouraging players to mix and match their teams frequently to get abilities better suited for the immediate challenge, including additional stat boosts if you have a themed team, like a team solely consisting of Avengers or solely the Fantastic Four. I can get behind cool shit like that. I'm not sure how Ultimate Alliance 2 fared. I heard it's not as good, but we're due to get a third one real soon as a Switch exclusive published by Nintendo? What? The only other franchise I can think of that they jumped in and saved was Bayonetta. I mean, Nintendo likes to just silently hang out in the corner with their drool-covered amiibos and cardboard, so when they want to help make a third game in a series 10 years later, I reckon that's a good sign. And it also obviously means that Wolverine's coming to Smash Brothers. He missed out on Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. He's gotta beat up Ryu somewhere. I brought up Deadpool in my previous video to talk about his theme song in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and now I'm bringing up Deadpool again to talk about Deadpool, the video game starring Deadpool, featuring Deadpool. The part of Deadpool will also be played by the Donkey Kong puppet, Donkpool. I'm so glad I went to PAX East. Much like X-Men Origins Wolverine is the best Wolverine game, Deadpool is the best Deadpool game. It's also the only Deadpool game. Didn't think it would take this long, but I'm happy we made it here eventually. And so is Deadpool. The entire plot of the game is that Deadpool wants to make a video game, while a comparatively less comical, more serious B-plot featuring the rest of the X-Men and Mr. Sinister runs concurrently. But, you know, Deadpool really wants to fuck a skeleton, so I know which plot I'm more interested in. Deadpool is brought to you by High Moon Studios, known famously for... The Bourne Conspiracy?
Jesus Christ, that's Jason Bourne.
Unlike the restrictions Raven Software had with X-Men Origins, High Moon had free reign, and they pulled out all the stops. It was like the Deadpool movie we never got, until, surprise, Activision delisted it. Until an actual Deadpool movie came out, and then they undelisted the game and ported it for about 5 minutes before delisting it. Oh my gosh! More Deadpool money! Oh well. Time to go lay off 800 people again! Yay! While the source material is utilized to an immaculate degree, the offset is that the gameplay does get a bit repetitive and clunky-ish at points, and the humor, while great, is unrelenting. Even Ryan Reynolds knew when to calm down for 1 second. I can see this getting really old for some people really quickly. But for everyone else, definitely pick this up if Activision decides it needs some lunch money sometime in the near future. The 2004 Punisher movie features an apartment brawl scene between Frank Castle and an Ivan Drago motherfucker who dresses like Waldo, and is one of my favorite action scenes in any movie, and I haven't even seen the rest of the movie. I'll remember to get around to it one of these days, but until then, I guess all I have to go on is the 2005 Punisher video game. Woe is me. Now, you've probably noticed by now that this is a running theme, that every game I've mentioned so far plays a bit clunky at points, and unfortunately, this does play like a less polished version of Max Payne overall. A lot of the guns suck butts, and while stealth is an option, and one I would have ideally preferred to take at points, running and gunning is most optimal overall, which is a bit disappointing. But to counterbalance this, the options Castle has are extremely fun to just mess around with. Like taking a hostage and using him as a human meat shield, entering some kind of berserk mode and just going to town, locking a guy in a coffin and throwing a grenade in there, impaling a dude on a bear trap, and of course, the interrogation scenes, which are playable. Yeah, remember that torture scene from Grand Theft Auto 5 with Trevor that people got up in arms about? Yeah, they made a whole game about that 8 years prior. The amount of unique interrogation scenes is amazing, some being unique, one-time only missable occurrences. Some are pretty dark. In 2019, the ESRB probably wouldn't have bothered, but back in 2005, they had to censor these with filters and camera angle changes, and you can only see them fully via mods. And then, some are fucking hilarious, like dangling a guy over a body of water where there's a shark patiently swimming in circles.
Alright, you son of a bitch. I know that you have information. You're gonna tell me what I want to know. Tell me what I want to know. I know you know what I want to know!
And although it loosely follows the plot of the film, which does mean we get a fight with Daddy Waldo over here, hell yeah, the game also takes detours like X-Men Origins did, but not pointless this time. We even get cameos from Nick Fury, Black Widow, Daredevil, and Iron Man. You know they wouldn't let the MCU poster boy show up in a game like this today. The Punisher's a great time. I mean, if Lego Marvel encourages creativity and imagination with blocks, the Punisher encourages creativity and imagination with blocking people over the head until they turn into potatoes. Good thing this game didn't go too overboard with the violence and include a torture scene where Castle makes his victims step on Legos. Now that would have been taking things way too far. Ah! Fuck! How does this keep happening? I'm sitting down! I said Spider-Man games would not be half the list. And we're now half the list in. Okay, so when's Spider-Man 2 showing up, Hap? Yep, there it is. Yeah. Spider-Man 2 has shown its age a little bit. The combat isn't as smooth as I remember it. There's not much I felt like doing after completing the main story. No, I didn't want to deliver pizza. I'm sorry. And while Tobey Maguire was undeniably a great Spider-Man in the movies, he kind of phones it in the voice acting department.
Oh no, Dr. Connor's class. I got so caught up in what I was doing, I forgot all about it. It's gonna kill me.
Oh no. What a mild inconvenience this is. But that's where the grievances begin and end. This game has otherwise aged pretty dang fantastically, and still to this day, with the exception of maybe one other Spider-Man game that we definitely aren't going to talk about at all, has the best web swinging mechanics of any Spider-Man game. Simply swinging around Manhattan to either get to the next mission or just cuz is immensely satisfying. I mean, every Spider-Man game before this either had limited web swinging or web swinging so artificial the only way this makes sense is if his webs are attaching to the moon. To go from all that to this is nothing short of a groundbreaking feat. And again, it does that thing where it tells the movie story and not at the same time, but this time the movie plots and the game exclusive plots are of equal quality and, in fact, at some points, complement each other. One of Peter Parker's biggest problems in Spider-Man 2 is him struggling to come to peace with his responsibilities as Spider-Man, something the new storyline with Black Cat in the game further builds upon. Also, I guess Mysterio shows up? I haven't quite narrowed down how turning the Statue of Liberty into an alien robot and a dimensional funhouse factors into my argument, but yeah, you know, don't worry about it. You fight him in a grocery store, he goes down to one hit, and it's funny. Shut up. Oh no. Cleanup on aisle 7. This one was a massive toss-up. It was back and forth multiple times. Which one got number 5? Which one got number 4? Which one got which arbitrary number on an arbitrary top 10 video arbitrarily? Spider-Man Web of Shadows beat 2 for one reason. I mentioned I felt the combat in 2 was a little dated. Web of Shadows, not only by direct comparison doesn't, it's flashy as shit. And the crazy amount of multi-hit combos at your disposal, plus the ability to switch between regular and symbiote suits on the fly to mix up your stats and combos, I mean, goddamn, this really feels like if Spider-Man was just in a Devil May Cry game now. Sure, and when I say that to myself out loud, how the hell am I supposed to put Spider-Man 2 over this? Well, there were some points of contention. While I am an easy sucker for Venom, and I can totally get behind zombie apocalypse, but with symbiotes as a storyline, it is inherently less interesting than the plot of 2, even if that's just because that one was already based on another great piece of Spider-Man media. The entirety of Act 1 is a completely separate gang war arc that has nothing to do with anything that happens once Venom's shit hits the fan. While Spider-Man 2 gives you a bit of an excuse to explore Manhattan haphazardly, the same can't really be said for Web of Shadows apart from picking up EXP tokens. The camera can become a huge problem sometimes, and
Where's Cage and his search party? The civilian volunteers! Pretty redhead, arm in a cast! You are no help!
there's a point where I start to prefer phoned-in Tobey Maguire. And that should not be a sentence I ever say. But that combat real good though. And the boss battles are awesome. I love the fight against Wolverine. While the rest of the game has a morality system that is merely a multiple choice option, this is the only time in the game where morality is decided through alternate means. Wolverine asks you Spider-Man trivia periodically during the fight, and answering him correctly and helping him fight symbiotes even though he's in the middle of trying to kill you nets you hero points. And answering questions incorrectly and prioritizing Wolverine over symbiotes takes hero points away.
No, wait, Mom, stop! It's me! It's me, Chris! Don't you recognize your own son? What's my name?
Can I get an easier question? And Moon Knight shows up out of nowhere and is voiced by Travis Touchdown, so let's fucking go.
Khonshu guides me, allows me to exact vengeance on those deserving.
Some people fuck at funerals. I cut off heads.
Only 2 Hulk games come to the top of my head. The first is the game based off of the 2003 Ang Lee Hulk film. I don't dislike this movie as strongly as most people do, but let me tell you about that video game. Man, the first item I think of on my list of things I want out of a game that stars a giant green steroid gremlin who can destroy buildings by clapping is stealth sections. Yeah. I'm very angry. I'm getting very angry. I'm turning green now. I'm so angry. The entire screen is getting green. That's how absolutely just livid I am, man. But then the aforementioned second Hulk game is Ultimate Destruction, and I suddenly feel a lot better. Both of these Hulk games were developed by the same studio, Radical Entertainment, long before Activision gutted them. I am really not liking how many times I've brought up Activision in this video. Somebody turn this filter off, man. Ooh. You may recognize Radical Entertainment from the prototype games, Simpsons Hit and Run, and here's something I didn't know until I looked it up. They apparently developed the NES version of Mario is Missing. From one green lad to another green lad. Charles Darwin. Well, Radical definitely made up for the Hulk game they made 2 years prior, in spades. Once again, surprise, shit's better when you ain't obligatorily surgically stapled to a movie. A game that plays to all the Hulk's strengths, sandbox gameplay that rivals Spider-Man 2's, a story written by a dude who penned a lot of Hulk comics, and no fucking stealth sections! The story isn't the deepest thing in the world, and the graphics do show a little more age than I would have otherwise been completely willing to ignore, but those really don't matter, and even if they did in the slightest, you play the game for 5 minutes and you realize your therapist really was telling you the truth when he told you CGI cutscene Hulk can't hurt you anymore. There is zero downtime. Once you start, you go. Go, and you go, and you go, until the end credits. No extra unnecessary changes to gameplay, it's the same core idea throughout. If you see it, you break it. and it never gets old. You have so many options for how you want to go about smashing up enemies. You can throw cars, you can make boxing gloves out of cars, you can surf on cars. I mean, quite frankly, The Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction is my favorite car game of all time. And next time anyone tells me, nah, it's Diddy Kong Racing, I'ma smack him. Okay, so, like, of course, a Marvel vs. Capcom title was gonna show up here. No surprise. What might be a surprise was that I had highly considered Marvel Infinite. Now look, my griefs with the game are the exact same griefs everyone else has. When I made a Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite video back in April 15th, 2017, the first story mode trailer that Capcom released a mere 10 days later was basically a giant middle finger that killed 90% of the hype that I had. And the game wasn't even gonna come out for another 6 months or so. And indeed, when it did come out, the roster, the graphics and clear lack of art direction, and the story mode all but ensured this game was, to all but hardcore competitive players, dead by the end of the year. So, like, 3 months.
But the gameplay is really fucking good. I would argue, not well, but I would argue that Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, in terms of gameplay, purely from gameplay, is the best Marvel vs. Capcom game of all time. And really, shouldn't that be the thing that matters above all else for a fighting game? In a perfect world, yes. But then, I take one look at Dante's face again, and my vote immediately defaults back to Marvel 3.
While Marvel 3's core gameplay doesn't feel as free-form compared to Infinite, the graphics don't make me want to cry, the music is straight fire, the trailers for the game where no one utters a single syllable are miles better than the entirety of Infinite's actual story mode, and the roster is the best out of all the Marvel vs. Capcom games. Yeah, Marvel 2 has more characters, but because they mostly relied on reused sprites, a lot of the Capcom side came from Street Fighter and Darkstalkers. There's 2 Wolverines for some reason. A handful of Capcom characters aren't even Capcom characters. And whoever thought making a Servbot its own character was a good idea, still needs an intervention 19 years later. The Marvel 3s has the biggest variety, and even though you only see the same 5 characters all the time in top competitive play, it is really fun to just build a varied and stupid team out of nothing. Like, I don't know, MODOK, Ishenko, Albert Wesker, alright, go ham, we'll figure shit out later. So while everyone else is busy going to 4chan and insisting, nah mate, Marvel vs. Capcom 4 is definitely happening, this time for real. Seriously, it's somehow getting as bad as Smash Brothers fake leaks now. I'll be over here in the meantime playing Ultimate Dr. Doom vs. Virgil 3. At least Virgil is the one son of Sparta who still has a face.
Not that I really had slow build-ups to any of the other games we talked about so far, and we're definitely not going to start now. Spider-Man on PS4. It had a lot to live up to. I know I put Web of Shadows above Spider-Man 2 on this list, but for all intents and purposes, Spider-Man PS4 was going up against Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man PS4, still a wee lad. Only came out, like, what, 6 months ago? The youngest game on this entire list. Insomniac Games, the developers of Ratchet & Clank, Spyro the Dragon. Fantastic series. That studio would never have been my first pick for a Spider-Man game, let alone a Spider-Man game meant to surpass all the others. And then they shut my whore mouth up really quickly.
I can confidently say that the narrative of Insomniac's Spider-Man is now my favorite of all Spider-Man media. I can't speak for any notable comics, I wouldn't know anything there, but Spider-Man for PS4 beats the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies and beats Spider-Man in the MCU. And I'll go a step further. This is amongst my favorite single-player video game experiences of all time. Even when I knew where the story was gonna go, like, don't freaking spoilers me, Dr. Octavius shows up. You know some robot tentacles are going up his gooch by Act 3, okay? But even with stuff like that, I was completely hooked and immersed from start to finish. I was constantly second-guessing what was about to go down. I was constantly second-guessing stuff that already went down. J. Jonah Jameson is now Alex Jones, and that's literally the most amazing thing ever. So much fan service in the amount of costumes and classic characters that appear, and the gameplay makes me... I streamed this game to a whopping 6 people. And I'm the kind of asshole who sometimes stresses over arbitrary internet numbers. And I couldn't care less. I was that into this game. My only real 2 points of contention were problems I've already expressed earlier. This game does have stealth sections. Half of them are actually really cool. One in particular with Miles Morales fucking flabbergasting me. Half of them, however, they could have been cut.
Perfectly balanced, this whole thing should be.
And there's these puzzles that aren't bad, or even that hard, but it does bring the rest of the game to a grinding halt for a minute or two. But someone on the development team must have realized that a week before launch, because there's an option to skip that shit if you want, and as quickly as the puzzles showed up, you're suddenly back to playing the best damn Spider-Man game, and the best damn Marvel game. Even if it doesn't have Big Wheel.
I will remember you.
Wait a second.
Big wheel, and I'm no joke!
And that's my top 10 Marvel games list, which I don't think is that different from most other Marvel games lists on YouTube. If only there was a way to get rid of half of all YouTubers in the universe. To bring balance to the algorithm. But puppets can't snap, so I guess instead we're gonna be playing the #1 Marvel game, the actual #1 Marvel game, Fortnite, baby! Let's get it! This wig is part of my upcoming Rubrica cosplay. So, I would definitely appreciate some feedback. Let me know how much of a beautiful anime girl you think I would be. Thank you. Arigatou gozaimasu.